away, I suppose your curiosity may pant for some news of your old friends. Miss Williams and I live much as we did. Miss Cotterell continues to cling to Mrs. Porter, and Charlotte is now big of the fourth child. Mr. Reynolds gets 6,000 a year. Levitt is lately married, not without much suspicion that he has been wretchedly cheated in his match. Mr. Chambers is gone this day for the first time the circuit with the judges. Mr. Richardson is dead of an apoplexy, and his second daughter has married a merchant. My vanity or my kindness makes me flatter myself that you would rather hear of me than of those whom I have mentioned, but of myself I have very little which I care to tell. Last winter I went down to my native town, where I found the streets much narrower and shorter than I thought I had left them, inhabited by a new race of people to whom I was very little known. My playfellows were grown old, and forced me to suspect that I was no longer young. My only remaining friend has changed his principles, and was become the tool of the predominant faction. My daughter-in-law, from whom I expected most, and whom I met with sincere benevolence, has lost the beauty and gaiety of youth, without having gained much of the wisdom of age. I wandered about for 5 days, and took the first convenient opportunity of returning to a place where, if there is not much happiness, there is at least such a diversity of good and evil that slight vexations do not fix upon the heart. I think in a few weeks to try another excursion, though to what end? Let me know, my Baretti, what has been the result of your return to your own country, whether time has made any alteration for the better, and whether, when the first raptures of salutation were over, you did not find your thoughts confess their disappointment. Moral sentences appeared ostentatious and tumid when they have no greater occasion than the journey of a wit to his own town. Yet such pleasures and such pains make up the general mass of life, and as nothing is little to him that feels it with great sensibility, a mind able to see common incidents in their real state is disposed by very common incidents to some very serious contemplations. Let us trust that a time will come when the present moment shall be no longer irksome, when we shall not borrow all our happiness from hope, which at last is to end in disappointment. I beg that you will show Mr. Beauclerk all the civilities which you have in your power, for he has always been kind to me. I have lately seen Mr. Stratico, professor of Padua, who has told me of your quarrel with an abbot of the Celestine order, but had not the particulars very ready in his memory. When you write to Mr. Marsili, let him know that I remember him with kindness. May you, my Baretti, be very happy in Milan, or some other place nearer to, Sir, your most affectionate humble servant, Samuel Johnson. The accession of George III to the throne of these kingdoms opened a new and brighter prospect to men of literary merit who had been honoured with no mark of royal favour in the preceding reign. His present Majesty's education in this country, as well as his taste and beneficence, prompted him to be the patron of science and the arts. And early this year Johnson, having been represented to him as a very learned and good man, without any certain provision, his Majesty was pleased to grant him a pension of £300 a year. The Earl of Bute, who was then Prime Minister, had the honour to announce this instance of his sovereign's bounty, concerning which many and various stories, all equally erroneous, have been propagated, maliciously representing it as a political bribe to Johnson to desert his avowed principles and become the tool of government which he held to be founded in usurpation. I have taken care to have it in my power to refute them from the most authentic information. Lord Bute told me that Mr. Wedderburn, now Lord Loughborough, was the person who first mentioned this subject to him. Lord Loughborough told me that the pension was granted to Johnson solely as the reward of his literary merit, without any stipulation whatever, or even tacit understanding that he should write for administration. His lordship added that he was confident the political tracts which Johnson afterwards did write, as they were entirely consonant with his own opinions, would have been written by him though no pension had been granted to him. Mr. Thomas Sheridan and Mr. Murphy, who then lived a good deal both with him and Mr. Wedderburn, told me that they previously talked with Johnson upon this matter, and that it was perfectly understood by all parties that the pension was merely honorary. Sir Joshua Reynolds told me that Johnson called on him after his Majesty's intention had been notified to him, and said he wished to consult his friends as to the propriety of his accepting this mark of the royal favour after the definitions which he had given in his dictionary of pension and pensioners. He said he would not have Sir Joshua's answer till next day, when he would call again, and desired he might think of it. Sir Joshua answered that he was clear to give his opinion then, that there could be no objection to his receiving from the King a reward for literary merit, and that certainly the definitions in his dictionary were not applicable to him. Johnson, it should seem, was satisfied, for he did not call again till he had accepted the pension, and had waited on Lord Bute to thank him. He then told Sir Joshua that Lord Bute said to him expressly, "It is not given you for anything you are to do, but for what you have done." His lordship, he said, behaved in the handsomest manner. He repeated the words twice, that he might be sure Johnson heard them, and thus set his mind perfectly at ease. This nobleman, who had been so virulently abused, acted with great honour in this instance, and displayed a mind truly liberal. A minister of a more narrow and selfish disposition would have availed himself of such an opportunity to fix an implied obligation on a man of Johnson's powerful talents to give him his support. Mr. Murphy and the late Mr. Sheridan severally contended for the distinction of having been the first who mentioned to Mr. Wedderburn that Johnson ought to have a pension. When I spoke of this to Lord Loughborough, wishing to know if he recollected the prime mover in the business, he said, "All his friends assisted." And when I told him that Mr. Sheridan strenuously asserted his claim to it, his lordship said, "He rang the bell." And it is but just to add that Mr. Sheridan told me that when he communicated to Dr. Johnson that a pension was to be granted him, he replied in a fervour of gratitude, "The English language does not afford me terms adequate to my feelings on this occasion. I must have recourse to the French. I am pénétré with his Majesty's goodness." When I repeated this to Dr. Johnson, he did not contradict it. His definitions of pension and pensioner, partly founded on the satirical verses of Pope which he quotes, may be generally true, and yet everybody must allow that there may be, and have been, instances of pensions given and received upon liberal and honourable terms. Thus, then, it is clear that there was nothing inconsistent or humiliating in Johnson's accepting of a pension so unconditionally and so honourably offered to him. But I shall not detain my readers longer by any words of my own, on a subject on which I am happily enabled, by the favour of the Earl of Bute, to present them with what Johnson himself wrote, his lordship having been pleased to communicate to me a copy of the following letter to his late father, which does great honour both to the writer